Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Bright Founders Talk at Temi. Temi is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. My name's Matthew, and I'm joined today by Mr. Caleb Avery, who is the CEO and founder of a company called Tild. How are you today, Caleb?
Yeah, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks so much for having me on the show today.
And thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be with us. Tell me, Caleb, can you introduce us to Tild? Can you tell us what it's all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So, at Tild, we do PayFac-as-a-Service. So for those of you looking on at home, you can check out the neon sign behind me that'll be staring at you during today's episode. But at Tild, we empower software companies to create an embedded payments experience that's delightful, transparent, profitable, and stupid simple. And so what does that actually mean? So at Tild, we're providing turnkey white-labeled payments infrastructure primarily targeted at ISVs and vertical software companies that want to embed and ultimately monetize the payments that are flowing through their downstream customers.
Wow, that's quite a mouthful. I'm going to break that down a little bit as we go on through today. Can you tell me how this came about? How did you come up with Tild?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I started my journey in the payment space at 19 years old. Going door-to-door, selling payment processing services to small business owners. Probably not what every 19-year-old is doing in college, but for me, that was the start of my journey. And over time, as we were scaling up that first business, we started getting brought in on these consulting opportunities for software companies. And most of the businesses that we were consulting for were vertical software businesses. So think like a dental software company or a camp, software platform or golf course management platform. And for a lot of these software companies, they were partnering with folks like Stripe or Braintree that you've probably heard of. And they were just passing along the 2.9% and 30 cents from Stripe onto their merchants. And so when I was doing a lot of this consulting work, this was, 7, 8, 9 years ago, before this idea of payment monetization and recurring revenue streams from payments was really the mainstream idea that it is, today. And so over time, as I was doing this consulting work for software companies, initially we were recommending legacy solutions like an NMI or an Authorize.net, and then helping them negotiate referral agreements with some of the large publicly traded payment processors. And the practical reality was that legacy technology combined with that manual onboarding solution was not that smooth experience that these software companies were looking for, especially when they're used to that instant digital Stripe boarding experience. And so one of our clients doing about $1 billion of processing volume thought that they wanted to go become a PayFac. And maybe at some point today, we'll dive into exactly what, a PayFac is. But the reality was that process to go become a PayFac was typically a 2-year multi-million-dollar process. And so for my company that I was consulting for, once they actually understood what it meant to be a PayFac, they had no interest in going and becoming a PayFac. And so for me, seeing these opportunities over and over again with these software companies that wanted a better way to embed payments, that wanted a better way to monetize payments, almost 5 years ago, I convinced myself that there was this opportunity, to go build what became Tild and what became PayFac-as-a-Service.
Wow, that's quite interesting. That's a fantastic story. You started at 19, you found an opportunity, and you were working and studying at the same time. Were your studies interlaced with what you were doing? Was it something separate? How did those things tie together?
Yeah, so I was getting a degree in business administration. And so certainly there was some, applicability in what I was studying day to day, learning about marketing, learning about economics, learning about accounting, and then actually having the opportunity to apply that in the real world, in my business, was really the best opportunity possible for me. And certainly I feel like I learned as much, if not more, running the business over the years as I did in school. But there was certainly a lot of kind of relevant transfer from the knowledge that I was gaining in classes to actually having the ability to apply that kind of day in and day out at work.
That's terrific. And let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about starting the business. Did you go the bootstrap route? Did you go apply for funding? How did you go about getting things started, getting it off the ground? Did you find partners? What was the process there?
Yeah, so I started this journey in January of 2019. And for me, initially, I was a solo founder, bootstrapping the business in the early days, because for me, I knew that there were several pretty important hurdles that if I couldn't get over those hurdles, probably wasn't worth my time, and there probably wasn't any interest from investors to actually come in and fund the business. And so really trying to get some of those early proof points established. And so for me, there were some regulatory hurdles that we had to get through, some legal hurdles that we had to get through, and then we needed to get our first back-end processor on board. And so I spent the better part of the first year clearing some of those early hurdles, and then as I started to get through some of those early hurdles, started to raise just small kind of friends and family money to bring on some contract developers to build out the early MVP. And it really wasn't until we were about 18 months into building out the business that we even thought about going out to raise outside funding. And really the catalyst for that was COVID. And so for me, when COVID hit, it was a very interesting time for all of us. But for me personally, most of my income was coming from my prior business, which was payment processing for small businesses. And you may recall that many small businesses were closed for quite a long period of time, in the early days of COVID, and revenue streams were impacted. And so for me, there was a change in kind of my situation, at the start of COVID. And so we started to look at, okay, well, what would it take to get the business to a place where it was fundable, by outside investors, and really spent a couple of months preparing and getting together the pitch deck, the story, the data rooms, doing kind of formal, customer discovery, and really getting ourselves prepped up and ready to raise. And so we went out midway through 2020 and ended up closing on an early round of capital later that year.
It sounds like quite the journey, and starting through COVID and being there at the beginning of that is something tricky in itself. You must have learned a lot of things, both about the business and about yourself in navigating through this, in building this up. Can you share some of those experiences with us?
Yeah, certainly. I think, one of the things that I've certainly, learned about myself is that I love problem solving. I think I knew that prior to starting Tilt, but it's very apparent to me that's one of the things that I truly love, is just day in and day out having the ability to solve, challenging problems. And I think that the reality of those early days in COVID was like every day you were learning something new, and the reality of kind of the business and the world around us had shifted, where the needs and pain points of our customers, the software companies, had changed. The needs and demands of small business owners had changed. The funding environment had changed. And so it was this kind of rapid evolution where every day just taking in new information and figuring out, how to solve problems. And then, from a business perspective, frankly, just learning that you've got to be flexible. And so for me in the early days, I had a very clear vision of where we wanted to go. And that really still hasn't changed all that much in 5 years, but the path to get there has evolved, pretty substantially. And so just making sure that I was surrounding myself with the right people that had that similar kind of fluid mindset, like we are going to find a way, we are going to persevere, we are going to, power through, but we also have to, understand the dynamics are changing around us, and let's find, the optimal path, through the chaos that's happening around us.
Tell us a little bit about that, because that's interesting. And it seems to be a common thread through these discussions. It's always surrounding yourself with the right people. How do you go about that? What are the qualities that you look for? You told us a bit about the drive and that, but what are some things that you look out for? How do you make those decisions? Who to involve in your pride and joy?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I mean, certainly the people that you surround yourself with are going to be the biggest determining factor to whether you're succeeding or failing. So you need to kind of overemphasize on that selection process. And for me, there's a couple of things in there. I think, thing one is making sure that you're actually selecting the right hire at the right point in time. When do you bring on a CTO? When do you bring on a COO? When do you bring on, a head of sales, a head of marketing? And for me, the first hire that I looked to bring on was essentially hiring a co-founder in a sense. But for me, it was finding someone that complemented my weaknesses. And so it was really taking a hard look, internally, and saying, hey, what am I really good at? What do I want to, focus on? Because when you're a solo founder, you do everything. When you bring on, employee number one, okay, now there's this division of labor. And so for me, those first couple of hires were really critical, and a lot of it was filling, gaps in either my knowledge or, gaps in what I actually, did or did not want to do, on a daily basis. And so that kind of led me to, who to hire. But there was also really a strong emphasis around the culture, of the business. And one of the things that we talk a lot about at Tilt is this idea that, we're not your grandma's payments company. We're out here to change the landscape, for the better. And for us, that lens and that filter from a culture and a company values perspective was really an important tool for us in the early days, both helping us decide who to hire, but also who not to hire, throughout the journey.
So that's quite a big thing. And bringing in outside people, you were talking about a division of labor. Was it easy for you to delegate tasks to somebody else? Did you hold on a little bit?
Yeah, I would say for certain tasks, very easy for me to delegate. Things that I really didn't want to do, I found incredibly easy to delegate. And then, even here today, 5 years later, 45 plus people on the team, there are things that are still hard for me to delegate. I think over time, as we've scaled up the business, it's become something that I've been more conscious and more aware of. In the early days, it was really looking at like, what are the things that I absolutely have to delegate? And nowadays, I'm really trying to consistently evaluate like, where are opportunities for me to continue to delegate more and more, to the phenomenal team members, that I've surrounded myself with. And sometimes, I come to those conclusions on my own, and sometimes it's my team pushing me and saying, hey, Caleb, can I take, this one thing, off your plate? And that's when, you've got some rock stars around you, and they're actively helping you, in that delegation process.
I like that. That's very, very cool. It's a nice feeling being surrounded by rock stars. So let's talk a little bit. You mentioned it earlier, and I'd love to touch on it. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's blind on this, but what is PayFac-as-a-Service? What is PayFac? Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people hear the term PayFac, and they might have, a little bit of an idea of what it is, but aren't exactly sure. And so let's start with PayFac, and then we can go into PayFac-as-a-Service. So when I think about the PayFac model, first of all, it's short for payment facilitator. And so first off, it is an acronym. So PayFac standing for payment facilitator. But when I think about, what is a PayFac and how does that differ from the traditional kind of ISO agent model that's dominated the payments landscape for decades, the PayFac model, which has really been made popular by companies like Stripe, Braintree, PayPal, Toast, might be some of the companies that you've heard of that employed the model. It's really about this idea of a master merchant and a sub-merchant. And so in the traditional kind of ISO agent model, the card brands, so Visa, MasterCard, Discover, Amex, are really dictating what the underwriting process looks like for a small business owner to be able to accept credit card payments at their business. And so under that traditional model, it's a very extensive underwriting process. It's typically a PDF application. You're collecting all of the supporting documentation. There's a manual review. And so there's a lot of hurdles and friction to get, a small business owner onboarded to accept credit card payments. Whereas, the Square, Stripe, model is really predicated on this idea of instant digital onboarding. Go on your phone or your computer, fill out, 2 minutes of information, and a minute later you're approved and ready to, start accepting credit card payments. So a very different experience from a merchant user, kind of small business owner perspective. And that's ultimately enabled by this master merchant, sub-merchant concept. And so the PayFac, so Stripe, goes through a very extensive vetting process with the banks, the acquirers, the card brands to get registered as what's considered this master merchant. And that's what enables them to create this streamlined, frictionless, onboarding experience for all of those sub-merchants, small business owners that are signing up underneath them. And so there's a ton of advantages to the model. Stripe's now a $50 billion, company. Square's not doing too bad. PayPal's not doing too bad. Adyen, not doing too bad. But The reality of the PayFac model is that traditionally it was reserved for those larger companies, those established players, because it was such a time-intensive process to go through that experience to go become a PayFac. And the original hypothesis behind PayFac-as-a-Service was what would have to be true for a vertical software business to leverage the benefits of the PayFac model, but launch in 1 week. We're almost 5 years in. We haven't quite hit the 1 week mark on average, but we're pretty darn close. So at this point, we partner with north of 100 software businesses, and we are averaging a 9-day integration into Tilled. And so we've taken this incredibly complex process of becoming a PayFac and distilled that entire experience down to, hey, realistically in 9 days, you could get integrated and get up and running with PayFac-as-a-Service and embed and ultimately monetize payments within your platform.
And what's it been like dealing with the competition, dealing with some of those big names that you've mentioned there? Are people generally welcoming of the idea? Are you getting a bit of resistance? How are things going on that department?
I think it's an interesting question. I think it kind of depends on what lens you're looking at, whether they've been positive and welcoming or not. Haven't gotten a lot of fruit baskets and congratulations from Stripe directly, but certainly the customers in the market have responded very favorably to our kind of entrance into the ecosystem. And I think for us, originally we focused quite a bit on content marketing and really educating the market on like, what is this concept? I mean, we made up the term PayFac as a service, which is always a bit of a risky move as a startup to think about like creating, a category. But I think for us, in hindsight, it was a great decision for us because it really allows folks to just crystallize like, what does Tilled do? And in, a couple of words, they're able to understand, okay, PayFac as a service. Yeah, I understand, what you guys do versus, the intro that I gave at the beginning of the segment, 2 minutes, lots of jargon, kind of hard, for folks to understand. But for software companies that have, heard me on a podcast, read the blog, read the ebooks, followed us on LinkedIn, over time, folks are understanding what PayFac as a service, actually means. And we've now got quite a bit of copycats, out there in the market that are coming along and adopting the PayFac as a service terminology, which I think is fantastic. I think it's the best approach possible for the software companies that we're serving, and the market is huge. We as Tilled do not have the capacity to serve every single vertical software business in the world. We need our competitors out there to help. And I think the reality for a lot of the smaller competitors in the space, there's really been, in my mind, a sense of kind of camaraderie fighting against, the Stripes and Adyens, of the world. And so I think it's been a really enjoyable experience, getting to compete in a huge market. And every dollar we can take away from Stripe is a small victory in my mind.
I like that. Fantastic. Good for you. I hope it's many, many dollars to come in the future. And while we're on that, can you tell us what is the outlook for you? What are your future plans? Obviously, without giving away any secrets, what are you looking at? Where do you see yourselves going?
Yeah, did we sign an NDA before this podcast? So when I think about where we're headed at Tilled, to me, when I look at the market overall, I think we have certainly seen in the 5 years that I've been doing this a pretty marked shift in the overall kind of macro payments ecosystem in favor of this idea of software-led payments. So when you look at 10, 20 years ago, historically, small business owners got their credit card processing from their bank, from an agent walking in the door, from their local ISO, and that was the distribution model for payments. And we're seeing this shift that's happening, across the industry towards this idea of software-led payments, where my personal opinion is, over the next 5 years, you will see that the majority of small business owners are leveraging an integrated software solution as their method of accepting credit card payments in their business, whereas that was, 14%, of the market 5 years ago. And so you're talking about trillions of dollars in payments that are changing hands from the legacy incumbents to, these software-led businesses. And at Tilled, we're really looking to be on the forefront of that change. And what we're starting to see is interest, not just from the software companies themselves. So we've got, 100 plus software companies that we partner with directly. We've also got, I think at this point, north of 160 ISOs and payments consultants. So that legacy distribution channel is now saying, hey, how do we get in on software-led payments? How do we, start selling to ISVs? And so over the last, 18 months or so, we've started to arm the legacy distribution channel with the ability to go sell PayFac-as-a-Service to ISVs. And now the shift that we're starting to see, and I think we will see, accelerating over the years to come, are that the traditional incumbents, so the publicly traded and some private, payment processors, acquirers, banks, are starting to say, hey, how do we get in on PayFac-as-a-Service? How do we get more competitive in the software company ISV segment? And so, we're starting to offer a white labeled version of our platform to some of the folks that you would think of as competitors. And so, what I was saying, I'm really enjoying the kind of competitive arena. It's because a lot of times in payments, there's this idea of kind of cooperation, if you will. It's like you're competing, you're partnering, you're working together, to provide the solutions that are needed in the space. And so, we're in the process of actually signing up a lot of folks that you would think of as traditional competitors, for Till, that want our technology and want to distribute it, through their channels. And, in my mind, I'm excited to see the industry as a whole moving in the direction that I thought things were headed, 5 years ago. But, 5 years later, undoubtedly, this is the direction that we're going, and it's only accelerating at this point in time.
Good for you. It's fantastic news, and it's also great to see your enthusiasm. I can see you're excited about it. I can hear your excitement as well. Last little question for you, as somebody who's started a business, generated a team, studied the markets, gotten in there, any advice for anybody looking now, sitting at home thinking, oh, I have this idea, this is something I want to do, I think it's the right time, I think people want this. Any advice you could give a person like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, for me, when I think about advice for that person thinking about, starting a business, make sure that you are actually falling in love with the problem that you're solving, not the idea of starting a business. And what I mean by that is that it is a grind, it is a journey. It takes forever to get a business, to a point of being, successful. I'm almost 5 years in, and I feel like, there are days where I just cannot believe how hard, it is to be doing, what we're doing. And we've raised tens of millions of dollars, and I've got a big team, we've got lots of customers, and it is hard every single day. And so what I mean by that is, if you are really passionate about the problem that you're solving, you are going to stick out, the highs, the lows, the grind, the struggles, along what could be a, decade plus long, journey to building that business. But if you're really enamored with the idea of starting a business, but you're not that passionate about the problem that you're solving, it's going to be a lot harder to stick it out, when times get tough, because you might get excited about the next idea and the next idea and the next idea that you have. And so spend that extra time in the beginning to make sure that that is the business that you want to go solve. But in general, get out there, talk to customers, start that business, because there's no better journey than being an entrepreneur, and you'll learn an incredible amount along the way.
Fantastic. Caleb, I'd like to thank you for spending your time with us today, for teaching us about PayFac and Tilled, and telling us your story. I think it's incredible, and we'll definitely be keeping our eye on you in the future and seeing where things go.
Awesome, Matt. Yeah, really appreciate you having me on the show today. And if anybody wants to learn more about, what we're doing here at Tilled, you can check out our website that we recently, updated, so tilled.com, or certainly follow me on LinkedIn. We're very active on the LinkedIn platform. So come check out me, Caleb Avery, on LinkedIn. But appreciate you having me on the show today. Thanks so much.